Hello, on another episode of The Convo Guy. Today I have a very unique guest, Andre. It's a pleasure having you on the Convo Guy
Appreciate
podcast.
that. Appreciate your
Um,
time.
so I hear you were a former police officer.
Yes.
Okay. How long were you a police officer for?
9 years, 7 months, and 4 days.
Okay. Why is the police called 12?
It's a slang from the street. And it's derived from Adam 12, which was a hit show back in the 60s and early 70s.
Why is the police called cop?
Because back then, they used to walk a beat. And when they would walk a beat, the badge, which at the time wasn't made of brass, it was made of copper.
Can you say the Miranda rights quote by quote?
I'll try. Would you like for me to try?
Yes, sir.
Sir, I have something I have to read before we go into any questions because at the point that I start this, I can only ask you specific questions toward the situation which I'm investigating. And I want you to explain to me that you understand what I'm saying. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be afforded to you by the state. Do you understand the question that I just said? You have a right to stop this interview anytime you want to.
There are bad cops and good cops. What percentage would you say are generally out there trying to protect and serve?
I would say 70 to 80% is really out there trying to protect and serve because it's a hard job, being that you're putting your life on the line, be it someone confronting you or someone just walking up to you. Because at the point you are a police officer, you're a police officer on duty and off duty because there are some people that recognize you without the uniform and some people that do. So the people that recognize you without the uniform, they might be one of 1,000 people you came in contact with in that one day. But if you treat that person right, and that person saw you, whether they was someone you arrested or someone you just helped, they recognize your face. And a lot of people only recognize the uniform.
What are the factors that have to be present for a cop to no longer care about protecting and serving?
When he stopped caring about protecting and serving himself.
Do you have family members that were former cops or
Two brothers.
okay, former cops?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I was the third one in my family to go through the police academy.
Okay. Do you have any that are currently police
And no,
officers?
sir. We're all old men now.
What is your favorite cop movie?
I don't really particularly have a favorite cop movie. I would say if there's a cop movie that I really, really liked, it was a cop movie. I would say Elliot Ness, and I'm going way back, The Untouchables.
Do you know the cop movie? I think it's called Cop Out.
No.
Okay, but that's my favorite cop
Once
movie.
you get into law enforcement, the cop movies don't interest you no more because no crimes is solved
Okay.
in an hour, none is solved in 30 minutes. That's the reason I can't watch shows like Cops and the First 48. Don't work that way.
Okay, so you're just numb to.
Ah,
Okay.
it's like watching cartoons.
Which state and department did you work for?
I worked in the state of Georgia.
Which county?
Hall,
Okay. Which U.S. state has the largest police department?
New York.
New York. Oh, okay. So I'm guessing L.A. LAPD.
The LAPD is nothing compared to New York. Not that they don't have their professionalism in the people that they serve, but when you talk about New York, you're talking about water, you're talking about high rise buildings. Look at 9/11. I don't think in my world, even the cops in Israel could have handled 9/11 the way New York City handled it. Because you're talking about a dense amount of people in a dense area from all walks of life.
So NYPD, they have to deal with. It's basically those cops that have to deal with a country on its own.
They're a country on its own. That's a good way to put it. In a very small area.
What is the best state to be a police officer in?
I can only speak for Georgia, but I think when you look at the totality and you look at what's best for the cop, the officer's retirement, cost of living, and quality of life, I would say Florida.
What about the worst?
I would say a state like Wyoming or Alaska, to where your backup might be 20 miles away.
What is the difference between a sheriff and a police officer?
Police officer patrols municipalities, more or less cities, patrols counties. Is a constitutional officer. He's elected. A police chief is appointed.
Can an on-duty officer arrest an officer that's off duty?
A common citizen can arrest an on-duty cop. If he see and can articulate what crime he committed, he can.
Can an on-duty officer arrest another officer that's on duty?
Absolutely. Happens all the time.
Is it considered a lawful arrest if an officer doesn't read you your Miranda rights?
You're only under investigation doing a Miranda right. If he got probable cause or he can articulate a stop and frisk, we got to understand the difference between being detained and being arrested. I can put handcuffs on you and you're still just detained until I actually have knowledge and be able to articulate the crime that you committed, and especially crimes that is committed in my presence. I could get witness statements and all of this stuff, and I could arrest you under a witness statement. But at that point, I got to let you know, and the witnesses who gave me the information to arrest you, they're going to have to give me statements and show up to testify to the statement that they gave me.
Is it illegal for an officer to search your home without a warrant?
Here we go again. It depends on the circumstance. If someone we're in an area looking for somebody, and I can justify your door being cracked, a window being cracked, and I have reasonable, articulable suspicion that that person is in that house, I can go in and see if that person is in that house or clear that house to make sure that that person is not in that house.
Are there things that you witness as an officer that still affects you to this day?
Absolutely.
You mind not getting too much, but you mind just getting on a general surface, those things?
Kids drown. Car accidents where the parent, the single double occupancy car, the parent has passed away and the child is there, and you basically don't know who that child is, and you got to comfort that child. Sometime on a suicide, you got to go and basically get in contact with the family, especially if it's on a welfare check. The neighbors heard something funny and all, and you come to find the door cracked or something like that. Or, again, it's what you can articulate and what's reasonable. The key word is reasonable. What would a regular person think if you had to put that in front of a jury to give them, or the majority of them, to understand why you did what you did, when you did it, why you did it? All in a split second.
So as a police officer, you gotta think fast. You gotta be very rational.
In a split second, sir.
What was the proudest moment you ever experienced as a cop?
Me and another officer was doing security at a soccer game, and it was these two guys that had something to do with each other, which went back to their fathers, and it was an active shooter, and we apprehended him with a gun, loaded gun, without firing a shot or drawing our weapon.
What was the saddest moment you ever experienced as a cop?
Saddest moment would be, again, something that happened to a kid or something that we really couldn't do, or to try to comfort a person that you, based on your training, know was not going to make it.
Was there ever a moment you didn't want to arrest someone but felt like you had no choice?
That was almost an everyday thing.
During your years in law enforcement, did you experience racism in your department?
Absolutely. See, Andrew, please understand, you get the same people from the same society. You could grow up with a guy and you and him best friends and neighbors, and he go out and make a decision that changed the rest of his life, being a police officer or being a criminal. You're from the same society. You're from the same neighborhood.
When an officer pulls a car over, what are the chances of them arresting that individual afterwards? Meaning the probability.
You're going to have to, that's very broad. Because until you approach the car, you don't know who's driving. You know who the car is registered to, but you don't know who's driving it. And do remember, as you are approaching that car, you could call in that car to dispatch, and dispatch got other calls other than yours. And that's the reason you have the invent of in-car abilities to run tags and all of the technology that they have in vehicles now. Police officer work and stuff like that evolves. They don't do stuff now that they did right before I left. That's the evolution of it. Just like you could take your cell phone, your new cell phone could do something that your cell phone last year can't do. It evolves. Everything is an evolution.
What are the top reasons that gets people pulled over?
Proper equipment on your vehicle. As far as brake lights that they know, tail lights that they know. I'm for the car inspections, but your population gets so big that where you can't do them anymore. It goes back to the home, I think. My daughter now, because I trained her and trained my son, you do a walk around on your vehicle before you even get in your car and crank it up, because that vehicle is what carry you and bring you, and you're responsible. From the 16-year-old getting his license to the 75-year-old that they're about to take his license from him because he can't operate the car safely anymore.
How many times did you arrest someone for DUI reasons?
Excuse me?
How many times did you arrest someone for DUI reasons?
I never had a DUI arrest.
Oh, okay.
I had in a parking lot drunk. I've had driving into a park drunk, but as far as pulling over a traffic stop, DUI arrest, never had one.
When you were an officer, no, I think I asked you this already. Why do most officers not live in the city they serve?
Can't afford to.
Describe a time when you went into a scene thinking it was going to be regular and was shocked when you got there.
Almost very regular. Because nothing is what it seems. Because you go into a situation, everybody's got eyes focused on something, because you can't send one eye one way and one eye the other way. You got someone might be saying, well, Andrew don't have on no shoes, but this guy have on shoes. I'm concentrating on Andrew having on shoes. Well, what did Andrew have in his hands? Oh, wow, I don't know that. I just know he didn't have on no shoes. So that's the reason when I say you take the totality of the circumstances. You get some from him. And you hear a lot of say, if somebody tell you something that doesn't make any sense, it's probably not true. And you try to filter through the opinions, their biases and everything, and funnel it into a cup. And you take something this guy might say to you on the same level and funnel it in, and up to you to pull out the best scenario of what you think might have really happened. Say you go into a neighborhood conflict. This guy over here might tell you some stuff that this guy's been doing, but he didn't witness it. He heard it from the guy next door. And if you are new in the neighborhood, or you got into it with this guy about washing his car in this getting your grass wet, you see what I'm saying? On a split second, you gotta basically figure out what's going on, what really happened, and what these people assume happened. Because if you arrest this guy or you don't, you got to give them an explanation on why you didn't, if they're the ones that wanted him arrested.
Trayvon Martin's death in 2012 started the Black Lives Matter movement. How did you react to this social movement?
I didn't, because I wasn't there, they wasn't there, and the devil in the house was the media. It depends on what channel you looking at as to what they fed you. Do remember this. I don't know if you got any media questions or not. Their job is to fill up the hours between 5 and 6 o'clock. And if they can get you to thinking and waiting on them to tell you the rest of the story coming up at 6 to 7, do remember they got a deadline and a time slot that need to be filled.
What do you feel like has to happen for communities in the country as a whole to start trusting the police more?
Put themselves in the police officer's shoes. And here you go. I bet my interpretation of trust is different from your interpretation of trust, because my age is different from your age. Your interpretation of trust would be different from a teenager's interpretation of trust, because a lot of what he's heard is what's been fed to him by your generation, what's been fed to you by my generation. I can remember when there were no more police dogs because of the way the police dogs was used the generation before me. When you go and look at all of the civil rights movement, it took years for this country to go back to using K9. Think about that.
The youth is the future. Therefore, what did you do when you were an officer to encourage the youth and prevent them from being victims of the system?
You look at the term victim of the system. What's their old term? The only way to win is not to play. If I go to school every day, find me something to do after school. Chances of me being a victim is slim. It's when you do not have a youth, any color, do not have anything but free time on their hand. The thing about it, people hate video games now. Games put more kids in the house. But then there's a bad side of that too. They don't get out and play sports. They don't get out and do the exercise. They don't get out and socialize like my generation. I'm going to keep harping on generation because now that I'm in this generation, I can see what my generation did that your generation didn't do. If you wanted to know where all of us kids was in my generation, just ride through the neighborhood and see where all the bicycles was, to see where the basketball goal was, to see an open field of where kids out playing football. You take a subdivision like this one, where the kids gonna play football? Where the kids gonna go play baseball? You get where I'm going? Now you basically took one element away from them to where they build social skills, skills of working together, skills of being able to take a loss, being able to be gracious winners, because you took that away when you put the density of houses in. Because now, if a kid wanted to do something, they'd have to go to a community center. When my generation, all they had to do was go in the backyard. We have more money now. Kids don't push lawnmowers and rake leaves anymore. My generation did. Probably none of your generation did, but a few. But now you look at the other generation, they never will, because they was not raised in a house out like I was. They're raised in apartment complexes and in smaller neighborhoods, denser neighborhoods. Let's put it that way.
Andre, thank you for this interview.
Thank you.